It's the 23rd of July, 1983, and Captain Robert "Bob" Pearson is cruising at 41,000 feet over the Canadian wilderness in one of the most advanced commercial aircraft ever built. His Boeing 767 is barely 4 months old, the 47th to roll off Boeing's production line. Behind him, 61 passengers settled into their seats on Air Canada Flight 143, most of them dozing or reading as the aircraft hums along on its way from Montreal to Edmonton. Beside Pearson sits First Officer Maurice Quintal, 36 years old with 7,000 hours of flight time. Pearson is 48 with 15,000 hours. They're an experienced crew. But today, they're flying with a problem. Before takeoff in Montreal, they were told that the aircraft's fuel quantity information system, the computerized fuel gauges, was broken. All 3 gauges are blank. The aircraft should not have been allowed to fly. But the 767 is so new that the minimum equipment list is incomplete, with some pages still blank. And the ground crew has calculated the fuel manually, using measuring sticks dipped into the tanks. What nobody realizes is that the calculation contains a catastrophic error. The 767 is the first aircraft in Air Canada's fleet to use metric measurements. Every other plane in the fleet tracks fuel in pounds. This one tracks it in kilograms. The result? Flight 143 took off with less than half the fuel it needs to reach Edmonton. And neither pilot has any way of knowing. Over Red Lake, Ontario, halfway through the flight, an alarm chimes in the cockpit.
Fuel pressure warning, left side.
Pearson checks the instruments. The left fuel pump is showing low pressure, but the flight management computer, which is being fed the wrong fuel numbers, still shows plenty of fuel in the tanks. Pearson assumes the pump itself has failed. It's unusual, but not dangerous. Gravity should still feed fuel to the left engine even without the pump running. He shuts down the left fuel pump and carries on. A few minutes of silence pass. Then another alarm sounds.
Fuel pressure dropping on the right side too.
Now Pearson feels the first real knot of unease in his stomach. 2 fuel pumps failing independently on the same flight is extremely unlikely. Something else is going on. He and Quintal exchange a look. Before they can discuss it, a sound fills the cockpit that neither of them has ever heard before. A long, resonating chime. A sound Boeing never expected any crew to hear in flight. Pearson's training kicks in. He starts the auxiliary power unit, adjusts the controls, and begins planning a single-engine diversion to Winnipeg, the closest major airport. It's a serious situation, but a 767 can fly on one engine. They'll declare an emergency, divert, and land safely. Quintal is already on the radio.
Winnipeg Center, Air Canada 143. We have a flame out on our number 1 engine. We're requesting a diversion to Winnipeg.
But then, just minutes later, the second alarm changes everything. The same long chime sounds again. The right engine dies. The glass displays blink and go black. The overhead panels go dark. A 132-ton aircraft at 41,000 feet with 69 souls on board is now a glider. A small turbine deploys automatically from beneath the belly of the aircraft. It's called the ram air turbine. Without it, the pilots wouldn't be able to steer at all. It also powers a handful of backup instruments, a magnetic compass, an artificial horizon, an airspeed indicator, and an altimeter. Technology from before the Second World War. That's all they have. Quintal grabs the emergency manual and starts flipping pages, searching desperately for the section on flying with both engines out. There is no such section. Boeing never wrote one. The scenario was considered so impossibly unlikely that no procedure exists for it. They are on their own. In the cabin, the passengers have noticed something is wrong. The lights have flickered off. The air conditioning has stopped. And it's quiet. Too quiet.
The absence of engine noise is deeply unsettling. Flight attendants exchange glances and begin moving calmly through the aisle, checking seatbelts, their faces betraying nothing. In the cockpit, Pearson's mind is racing, but somewhere beneath the fear, a different instinct takes over. Bob Pearson is not just an airline captain. He's a competitive glider pilot. He has spent years learning how to fly without engines, how to trade altitude for distance, how to feel the air, how to stretch every foot of height into forward travel. He has never imagined using these skills in a Boeing 767, but right now, they're the only thing keeping 69 people alive. He calculates the glide speed. His best guess for a 767 is 220 knots. He settles the aircraft into a steady descent, treating every foot of altitude as currency. Spend it wisely, or you run out before you reach the ground safely. Winnipeg Center, 143. We've lost both engines. We're going to need the closest runway you can give us. The controller's voice tightens. 143. We show you 65 miles from Winnipeg and approximately 45 miles from Gimli. He runs the numbers again and again. The answer doesn't change. Bob, we're not going to make Winnipeg. Pearson absorbs this without a word. They need something closer, and Quintal has an idea. Gimli. I was stationed there when I was in the Air Force. It's an old military base. It's closer. Is there emergency equipment? I don't know, but it has runways. Pearson doesn't hesitate. He turns north toward Gimli. What neither pilot knows is that the Royal Canadian Air Force abandoned the base years ago. And today, a Saturday afternoon in July, is Family Day for the Winnipeg Sports Car Club. At this very moment, the old runway is packed with go-karts, race cars, families having barbecues, children riding bicycles, and campers parked along the tarmac. And a silent 767 is descending towards them. Below Winnipeg's radar coverage, Flight 143 disappears from the controller's screens. The last thing they hear from the cockpit is Quintal reading back their heading. Then, silence. Controllers in Winnipeg begin urgently radioing, asking about the number of souls on board. Inside the cockpit, Pearson and Quintal face a new problem. Without hydraulic pressure from the engines, the landing gear can't be deployed normally. Quintal hits the button for a gravity drop, releasing the gear doors and letting gravity pull the heavy wheels down. They hear the main gear fall and lock into place. 2 green lights appear on the panel, but not 3.
The nose gear hasn't locked. It's hanging loose, swinging in the wind beneath the aircraft, but refusing to click into position. There's nothing they can do about it. They're committed. Then, as Gimli comes into view on the horizon, Pearson sees something that makes his heart sink. They're too high. He's been so focused on stretching the glide, on making every foot count, that now, with the runway in sight, the 767 has too much altitude to land safely. If they come in this high and fast, they'll overshoot the runway entirely and crash into whatever lies beyond it. There's only one option left, a maneuver that Pearson has done hundreds of times in a glider, a forward slip. He crosses the controls, dropping the left wing and applying hard opposite rudder. The 767 swings sideways into the airflow. The fuselage itself becomes a massive air brake, catching the wind broadside and dramatically increasing drag. Altitude bleeds away rapidly without the aircraft gaining speed. No one has ever done this in a Boeing 767. No Boeing test pilot, no airline training program, no simulator scenario. As the aircraft slips sideways through the sky, losing hundreds of feet per minute, it passes low over a golf course. In the cabin, a passenger stares out the window and mutters, "Christ, I
can almost see what clubs they're using. But Pearson isn't looking at the golf course. He's looking at the runway, and now he can see what's on it. Cars, tents, people, children. His stomach drops. There's no time to warn them. Without engines, the 767 is almost completely silent. The people on the ground have no idea what's coming. As the speed decreases, the ram air turbine loses effectiveness. The controls are getting sluggish. The aircraft is becoming harder to maneuver with every passing second. At the very last second, people on the ground finally see the enormous shape of the 767 materializing above them. There are shouts, people scramble, go-karts swerve off the tarmac, parents grab children and run. Boys on bicycles pedal frantically away from the center line, just hundreds of feet from where the aircraft is about to touch down. The main gear slams onto the pavement. Pearson stands on the brakes with everything he has. Tires explode from the force, rubber shredding across the tarmac. And then the nose drops. The unlocked nose gear collapses on impact, folding back into its housing. The nose of the 767 crashes into the runway. It stops. The 767 comes to rest, nose down, tilted forward at a sharp angle, just a few hundred feet from where families had been sitting moments earlier. A small fire breaks out in the crumpled nose section. Go-kart racers, the first people on the scene, rush over with handheld fire extinguishers and put it out. Inside, the cabin is dark and tilted steeply forward. Emergency slides deploy. Passengers begin evacuating. Captain Pearson sits in his seat. His hands are still gripping the controls. The cockpit is dark, silent, and wrecked. He breathes. They made it. In the weeks that follow, Air Canada dispatches a repair crew from Winnipeg to assess the damage. When the crew examines the aircraft, they find all 3 fuel tanks completely dry. No leaks, no mechanical fuel loss. Every drop of jet fuel had been burned in flight. Investigators traced the problem back to the metric conversion error, a simple multiplication that gave the aircraft barely half the fuel it needed. Many Air Canada pilots later attempt to replicate Pearson's landing in a flight simulator. Every single one of them crashes. Air Canada initially disciplines both pilots. Pearson is demoted for 6 months. Quintal is suspended for 2 weeks. But as the full story becomes public, the reaction is overwhelming. Pearson receives the first ever Fédération Aéronautique Internationale citation for outstanding airmanship. The airline quietly reverses the disciplinary action. The aircraft, C-GAUN, now known to every Air Canada crew simply as the Gimli Glider, is repaired and returned to service. Passengers who know the story specifically book flights on it. It flies for another 25 years, retiring in January 2008. On its final flight, Captain Pearson and First Officer Quintal are both on board, this time as passengers. In June 2025, the recovered cockpit of C-GAUN was displayed at the Gimli Museum, a permanent reminder of the day a glider pilot, a military co-pilot, and a little bit of luck turned the impossible into the miraculous.